But she goes to me, "Oh, do you want to tell me how you like the experience?" I was like, and this is exactly what I said. "Do you really want me to tell you my experience here?" And she was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Are you sure?" So I was like, "Okay, let's start." And I prefaced it with, I have a show on my podcast network called Where in the World is Kayla New York? I'm Kayla New York. And I said to her, I go to places, I review them from my viewers and my people, and to tell them to go or to tell them not to go and all that stuff. And I told her, I cannot recommend your studio, and I will not recommend your studio. And she looked at me shocked, and she was just like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I said to her, the moment I walked in, I felt uncomfortable. I felt like you guys didn't want me here. Like it wasn't very welcoming. And she was like, "Oh, I can see how that could mess up." I was like, "Yeah." I sat here for 15 minutes. Nobody spoke to me. No one asked me any questions. And the people were walking around. And it was just like and it was all women. And it was just not, there was not a sisterly vibe. I didn't tell her that, but I'm telling you guys, there was no sisterly bond. It was just very cold. It was a very cold place, even though the place was nice and air conditioned and warm. But it was a cold reception. I had to say hi. They didn't give me any instruction, and she was just like, "Oh," and I told them, I was like, the rope, the thing was too low for me. And she was like, "Oh, well, we set it to standard." I looked at her like, "Bitch, do I look standard to you?" And I said to her, "I'm not a standard woman." So it's like, so to say you set it to standard and you're looking at me, you could have looked at me and said, "Knew I wasn't the standard." I didn't say that, but all I said to her was, "I'm not the standard woman." So it's like, and she was like, "Yeah, well, what we usually do is we adjust it while people are doing it, because you really can't tell until you're doing it." I said to her, I said, "So why do you guys ask us to be here 15 minutes before time?" She was like, "Oh, that's for me to set up." What does that have to do with us? Like, what does that have to do with me? Me being there 15 minutes early, that's safety checks and greetings and all that other stuff is supposed to happen for 15 minutes. And she was like, "Yeah, I can see what you're saying." And I'm like, "Yeah, if you would have fitted me before, within that 15 minutes that I was here, you would have known that the rope was too long. You would have known that I needed an extra bungee cord. You would have known all these things. There was only two people. And at the time, there was only one. She had more than enough time to do that. She didn't. And that tells me that they don't really care. You understand? So, you know what I rate stuff on for customer service? I give them a one. I give them a one for customer service. And the only reason why I don't give them a zero for customer service is because the instructor was, she tried to be nice. She smiled, she tried. You understand? It just didn't work. For comfort, I give a zero, because they didn't make you comfortable. They didn't like, it was like they didn't care. And I told her too, it's like going to a dance studio, not a yoga studio. I've been to yoga studios before. They're nicer than this. You understand? It smells like sage and shit, palo santo and all that other stuff. None of that. It was very cold. So client structure is a zero. Friendliness is a one, because she tried to be friendly. Will I go back? No. Will I recommend? Hell no. So that's my spiel on that.